I'm going to read this poem. It's entitled In This Place, which is from my first chapbook, which is called This Is Our Secret. And yeah, this just recently came out a little bit over a month ago, I think. I came out with this book, and I'd have to say I'm very proud of it. And it's been a labor of love, and it makes me happy every time I get to pull it out and share a poem with somebody or do a reading, because I'm very proud of the work that went into this. And it is the first book in a trilogy of chapbooks that that narrative, where the narrative through point is very important to me. And this poem in particular, to give it a little bit of preface, does stand alone. It can very well be taken in a silo and experienced just as it is, but as part of the greater collective. In This Place certainly has its place. So let me go ahead and read it. In this place, where currency and blessings are not the same, where tomorrow is less desire, more excuse, a single wildflower clutches her earth as if abandoned, as if having suddenly become aware and having no way of sharing. Feathers dust the roads. Instead of capacious trees and skies, the birds congregate in town halls beneath parked cars. In this place, seasons change with ululations of sirens and buzzers, flashing, whirling lights, and not with lambent subtlety of shade and tone that lets all know, just as a lover slaps her lover's face for the first time, that this is not the way it was intended to be. In this place, a coyote off Northern Avenue, whose mordant disbelief swallowed the city lights, doesn't quite think the streets are the place to be, saunters home with tail raised high, just in case someone had seen.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, what the hell does that mean, right? What is that craziness that Eric just read? So for me, this poem is really about sort of the surreal juxtaposition of the wild and the urban. And I wanted to communicate some of my personal distress about that intersection where we meet the natural world and either change it for good or for bad. But at the same time, because This Is Our Secret is a book about relationships and little secrets, I wanted to, or at least I intended to, put in elements into the poem that had of very striking imagery, like figurative language, like the lover analogy, is sort of this, is it kind of shocks you when you hear that portion because it's a little bit out of place, and there's some disillusionment that happens with that experience, and I also was attempting to incorporate elements of the natural world into the poem by utilizing and sort of personifying like the wildflower and the birds that are congregating in these human establishments or under parked cars, or the coyote having this sort of repulsive experience with the craziness that is the urban environment that's encroached on his domain, right? And he's like, I'm getting out of here. This is just not the place for me. And the bright lights and the whirling lights and just the chaos that comes with sort of the civilization that we've created. So I don't know if I am very eloquently communicating the intent behind the poem. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But those are some of the elements that stand out to me when I go back and read it again.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah, so that's a fitting selection for our Wild Earth Journal, I would say.
Yeah, I
So
thought
thanks for
that would be just perfect for you.
It was interesting, just and this is, not planned, I suppose, but the very first thing each of you said about your poem was the word place. So it was, I think, very kind of a specific, entry point in saying like, okay, I am here. I'm writing from a specific place, and like kind of using that as your as kind of that environment, from which you're writing. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
I also, I really appreciate that poem, Eric, and I like how it kind of dovetails with my work too, of course.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me listening to it, you used two of my favorite words in there, ululations and lambent, but you use them in ways that are jarring, like the ululations, not of cranes or,
Right.
but of sirens. And so I thought that I appreciated that your use of language supported and showed the theme of the poem, that sort of jarring contrast between the natural world and some of the human built world.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I appreciate that. Yeah, there is such joy to be found in the architecting of poetry, right? Mm-hmm. The fact is, as poets, all three of us, to be able to meticulously find that word that not only communicates our intent, but also might challenge the reader's preconception of the way that the word might be used in their day-to-day or the way they've always seen it used. I think that's a fun, playful strategy to incorporate and sort of challenge the normal by using language which can be so powerful and so moving and transformative, and to use it to find just maybe a slightly different way of saying something so that it hits somebody just in a way that they didn't expect, and that moves them, right? That causes that maybe a little flutter in their emotional heartbeat. So I'm really glad to hear you say that, because in crafting that particular poem, was very intent that the language be specifically that way, and to
Mhm.
hit you in those particular beats. That was, or at least that's my hope.
You did it. No, I know. I mean, I understand. It's like you write a poem and it's like, I write these poems and it's very clear to me what I'm up to, but somebody else is not necessarily going to see it. And it's an interesting thing about poetry because when I've done these readings and I'll almost always have someone come up and say, you know, I just don't get poetry. Or, it's like a prose writer here who's very well known, has published a lot of prose books, and he said, I just don't get poetry. And it's interesting because we never say, I just don't get prose. We always use that I just don't get for poetry. And I feel like it's so I've always tried to make my poems really accessible, but I find that there are still some poems that I don't fully comprehend either, but that probably just means that I need to read them more than 2 or 3 times even. And that's part of the joy of poetry for me, really, is that it's not all evident the first time through. It makes it more enjoyable knowing that I can read the same poem many times and get something new from it. Just like a good piece of abstract art, will send me every time, but in different directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.